Good afternoon, everyone. I know we've got the post lunch slot, so thank you for being with us for this session. Leading and healing after fire. This is all about how do we support and sustain, or more importantly, why is it really, let's go back a step. Why is it really important that we sustain people who find themselves in a leadership role after a mega fire? So that's what today is all about. I'm going to introduce myself quickly and frame the session, and then I want to really share the stage with our fabulous presenters here. So, firstly, the session today, as I said, is all about leadership in this role and making sure that we look after the well-being of those who lead in this space. A lot of us don't sign up for it initially, and that was very much where I found myself. So, my name's Jolie Wills. I'm originally from Christchurch, New Zealand. You might hear the accent. I live in Denver, Colorado right now. I'm a cognitive scientist, right? And I found myself, and I know a few of us have got this claim, right? An accidental specialist in something that I never anticipated being. And that is in how do we sustain the supporters in disaster recovery. And this happened because in my community, we had a disaster that damaged or destroyed 9 out of 10 houses in our city and claimed 185 lives. And in the work that I suddenly found myself leading and supporting my community, we had a team of incredible people who, like myself, were all impacted, and they live in the impacted community and they want to give so much of themselves to the long-term recovery. And despite everything I was trying to prevent burnout in that team, we were still burning them out. And that led to a Winston Churchill Fellowship. So I had a really amazing opportunity to visit other communities around the world, including here in the US, who were on that journey that no one signs up for of disaster recovery, to get an understanding of were we alone in the impacts, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But most importantly, what do we do better and differently to make sure that we can sustain those who have a role in this space? And there's particular challenges for leaders. So that's enough about me. I'm really honored to share the stage with these incredible, passionate, inspirational humans who are going to share their wisdom with us, right? And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and they can really share what it is they would like to with us. So I'm just going to run down the line. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, we might start with Clara and come backwards. If you introduce yourself and just why is this important, this topic, why is it important to you?
Great. Thank you so much. My name is Clara Bergen. As a very quick intro, my background is in healthcare services research and program development with a specialization in crisis mental health care. And I'm here today with Dee Dee Hirsch Mental Health Services. Shout out to my colleague Vanessa, who is also here with me. And we have developed a disaster care program in response to the 2025 LA wildfires, through which we have been able to serve around 4,000 adults, children, and families since those LA wildfires in January. So, to your question of why is this topic important to me specifically? I think when I thought about that question preparing for today, I I realized that it was long before the fires that I really started thinking about this topic specifically. And it was because I had a really close friend who had already been in disaster response for years. And she, to me, I think was this textbook definition of resilience. What is resilience? I would think of her, frankly. But she had a particular turning point after an especially traumatizing natural disaster that had an incredibly damaging impact on her mental and physical health. And I think the scariest thing was to me from the outside looking in was that there was no aha moment for my friend where she realized that that was really, what was really going on with her. My job personally is in clinical program development. And so looking at things from a structural organizational lens. And so when I was assigned to this project, this disaster care project, I had a lot of fears because I kept thinking about my friend and worrying where we were going to are we going to make a mistake? Or are we going to structure this program in a way that could put these leaders in a place where they would be in harm's way? But eventually I did call my friend. I asked for her advice. And she was really clear in her response. She said, yes, you do need to build this program, and there is a way to build it right. So, this topic is important to me because I think I and everyone in this room hold a responsibility to those who we ask to serve. We often ask ourselves to push our own limits and show up fully for our community in times of crisis and trauma. But most of us here, we are coordinating a response, and we're asking others to go out into the field and to lead teams as well. And so, to do that work right, I think part of our journey does have to be a reckoning with our own experiences of asking this of ourselves, of normalizing planned exposure to trauma without a healthcare plan in place. And I'm really excited to be here with everybody today because I think that we're going to be able to have a conversation about what that could look like. So, thank you.
I'm Rabbi Amy Bernstein, Senior Rabbi of Kehilat Israel Congregation in Pacific Palisades. I am also part of the Interfaith Clergy Network of the Palisades with my colleague, Reverend Grace Park. In the Palisades, we live in a culture. I heard a lot about aloha culture. And contrary to what people might think, the Palisades is very much an aloha culture kind of place. People choose to live there because they roll up the streets at like 6:45, and people are used to running into each other in the grocery store and in wherever we're doing our normal everyday thing. It is a very close community. People choose to live there because it feels like a village where our kids can play and meet at the Garden Cafe. So my synagogue did not burn. Many churches did. And the Palisades was a place built by really the Methodist, folks who got there first. It was Yemensville when Jews started moving there. And so a lot of my people bought houses when they were $30,000. This was their only asset. Now, having been so connected to each other, we are in what we're calling the Palisades diaspora. I'm not from Los Angeles, and so the only place I know around here to be home is the Palisades. That is my village, that is my home, and my own home burned to the ground. I have a 22-year-old daughter, so everything from her childhood is gone. Everything from 3 generations of my family that was handed down is gone. I'm 60 years old. This is not where I anticipated being at 60 years old with my major asset. I'm one of those people who this was my major asset. I was massively underinsured like so many others, and it was possible in my mind that I was now bankrupt if we had to rebuild. I'm in an HOA. Thank you for your condolences. And so it's not even my decision. But if there's a forced rebuild, I could be broke. That is an incredibly frightening place to be at 60 years old when I'm the sole provider for my daughter and myself. So this topic is important because it's all that's going on for me right now is going on with my 930 families. And it's going on for me personally, and just putting one foot in front of the other every single day. Some days feels like all I can manage. And I feel like it's time we talk about that. As leaders, our amazing Jennifer said they like to keep freshies around the table to keep it real. So I intend to be a freshie for a while to keep it real that some of us are stumbling through everything we do right now.
I hear that. I guess I'm an oldie at this point with almost 8 years out. So I'm Adrienne Heinz. I'm a clinical psychologist and a trauma and resilience researcher. I'm at the VA National Center for PTSD and Stanford University School of Medicine. I'm also a recent co-founder of a nonprofit that is using AI to assist in the disaster recovery process in a way that's trauma informed, really accessible, and ethically responsible. I'm here by accident, kind of like how Jolie described. I was a psychologist, but became an accidental disaster mental health specialist when my community of Sonoma County burned not once, but 3 times. Alina was showing a map. It was just a trauma map of all the, seeing that, visually displayed was just like, a wow. Well, no wonder I feel 10 years older than I am we had the Tubbs fire, the Wall Bridge, and then the Kincaid fire.
And so yeah, I just keep adding them to the list, keep getting punched in the nose. And so
Just because you need one more, right?
totally, totally. Everybody likes a polycrisis. Um, but I think it was really important to transform pain into purpose. And so we came together and organized to create the Sonoma County Wildfire Mental Health Collaborative, where we wanted to democratize access to mental health support so that there was equitable paths to recovery for all. And just this question about, why does this matter? Why do we care about the mental health piece? And I like to call it mental wealth, not just thinking about pathology, but how do we set the conditions for flourishing? We're at a we're at a point where we really have to meet the moment. As our planet warms and we reach that planetary boundary of, 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, we will change in irreversible ways. And so how do we fortify our psychological immune systems to endure? We have a tremendous capacity for resilience, but that requires community and resources, innovation and emergent leadership, which everyone in this room shows. And it's why you're here sitting together. And so thinking about how do we care for ourselves to run this very, very long journey ahead. And I'm just so grateful to have this conversation.
Thank you. And thank you each for sharing. This is very real and it's very raw for everyone here on the stage. And I know many of you here in the audience. So thank you for joining us for this topic. What I want to really dig into now is, let's again be real about the toll that this role can take when you find yourself in a leadership role that you didn't anticipate, that is hugely purposeful and there's a lot at stake. And that was one of the questions that I was asking as part of this Winston Churchill Fellowship. We were seeing the impacts playing out in our team. I was my own guinea pig, right? Through all of this, there was certainly my moments and seeing it in really good people doing good things, seeing the harm that was happening to them. And so one of the first questions was, are we alone in all of this? What is the impact of this kind of role? And I just want to put these up. We're not going to spend much time here. This is what I heard from over 100 people who had a recovery role in terms of the impacts for them in their lives, for their teammates, for their families, for their relationships, for their health, their mental health. So hugely sobering, and I don't want to spend much time here. What I'd rather do is that we bring this to life in terms of let's make it real. What does it look like in terms of for each of you, and just as much or as little as you would like to share. Clara, we start with you. What reflections do you have when we think about the realities of, a leadership role in disaster recovery? Why is it challenging? What does this look like? Yeah, for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And I think like you said, it's sort of shaped every day, and it's even been shaped even in the last 24 hours being here. I I'm a note taker, and I've been taking notes on the panel presentation so far, and there is one word that I think has come up in every single panel presentation, which is the word trauma. And a lot of the time, I think for professionals in disaster response and recovery, I know this is true for myself, it is about that really challenging overlay between primary trauma, so the things that we are experiencing, and that secondary trauma, so what we are exposed to and what we witness. And the difficult thing about that is that we don't know what will hit and we don't know when it will hit. And especially that is true in an extended recovery period like we see for any wildfire really. Um, Personally, when I transitioned into working in crisis mental health care, my own mental health did decline very rapidly. And similar to my friend, there was no aha moment for me. With the exposure to that secondary trauma, the decline I saw in my own mental health didn't really feel valid. And I'm sure this is an experience that people in the audience have probably shared. So I didn't have a clear narrative or through line. I was getting upset by things that seemed small or insignificant. And the things that would be, maybe seen as traditional trauma exposure were not impacting me in the same way. And that's the thing about trauma, and that's the thing about, why I think it's probably coming up repeatedly in across panels about housing and other subjects, is that trauma is so deeply personal, and the experience of trauma is so deeply personal. And ultimately, for me, what it came down to was a point where I kind of had to make a choice. I was not going to be able to continue to do this work without professional support for my own mental health. And I think that this is something that's stigmatizing for a lot of people. I'm someone who holds a leadership role in a community service organization, and I use the same services that we offer to our clients. I use therapy, I use medication for my mental health. And I think, tying back to your original question, what is at stake? We are at stake. All of us are at stake. Our lives, our health, we are at stake. And I loved what Katie said this morning in the keynote, that every one of us in this room, we all work in trauma care. So it's not just us who work in mental health services who are working in trauma care. And so, yeah, I think I want to end it there.
Yeah. Thank you. And I just want to highlight, you said something about it doesn't feel valid to feel this when we are externally focused on those that we support, right? And I think that's a really important point to highlight. And I think it's a real challenge, right, to create that space for ourselves. We think about the hidden impacts of disasters in terms of those that they impact, the community members that have lost their homes and things, right? But we don't think about the hidden impacts for those that are responding, and that looks like community members that are there for the long haul, walking alongside people through their recovery. And I know for many of us here, we sit in both camps, right, which is extra challenging. So, Amy, do you mind just sharing a reflection around, in terms of making this real, whatever you'd like to share?
Sure. So that list that you have up, check, 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 and check. So I think what we forget is that leaders are not, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And I know people in this room, preaching to the choir. Please know that I know that. But as a freshie, I want to say we forget that leaders often are not most triggered by or exhausted in the work. That's often not where we get tripped up and find ourselves questioning our own mental well-being and emotional stability. It's in the regular stuff we're expected to do after you're holding people in your care as a non-anxious presence, and we can do that really well. We're great at that. It's when they leave the office and go home to their families, and some of us go home alone. And then we're supposed to try to open the bills and try to make our way through a FEMA statement or an assessment of the property yet again. And who do I call for? And my partner died a year ago, May. My daughter's stepmother, my wife, she died a year ago, May. The dog died in August. It had been a really crappy run. And so I was really looking forward to a break after 2025. So part of it is how we go into the disaster is really important. Like, no one tells you when you're pregnant. They all talk about when the baby comes. No one says you're not going to sleep for the 2 months before the baby comes, because there's no room for both of you in there. No one tells you it's the regular stuff that you get a lot of praise for holding everybody. Rabbi, we know you're going through this and you've had so much loss, and so that you're able to hold everybody in your care. Yes, that's lovely that I'm admired and praised for that. There wasn't enough focus on, do you need to step away? I didn't step away. I went into hyperdrive, like so many of us do in the helping professions, particularly women, and waited too long, because the people I work for were also traumatized. And so they weren't necessarily thinking in the wholest way about me and the organization and what was going to be good for us. And I waited too long. And I will never do that again. Never.
Thank you, Amy. Adrienne.
Whew. Yeah. Let's talk about burnout and crispy and what that feels like. because I've been there. So I went into this the repeat fires, with I think a big struggle with comparative suffering. My family and I evacuated, took our stuff, didn't expect to see it when we came back, but we did. We were fortunate. So I engaged in a lot of comparative suffering in my leadership role. I didn't lose as much as what others did, and so it's my duty and my responsibility to serve and help where I can. And I did it with a lot of energy, and it was a tremendous honor. And I also quickly reached burnout about a year in, and kept going probably 6 months too long. And so the World Health Organization defines burnout with these three tenets. One is, physical and emotional exhaustion. The second one is kind of cynicism or feeling depersonalized and numb. And then the third being feeling ineffective. And that's exactly how I felt. I felt like a band-aid on a bullet hole, and that no matter what I did, I couldn't make an impact and move the needle towards healing. And, you know, we're going to leave this legacy of PTSD and suicide and inequitable displacement and student languishing and all these was horrible sequelae. And I thought, I'm no one's savior, but I can do more, and I can show up, and I can answer these emails, and I can coordinate these resources. And it's really sad that, I'm a psychologist who can't practice what she preaches, and, there's shame in that, and I would not recommend. I give it, like, 1 out of 5 stars going the path I took. So, thumbs down, and a lot of the feedback came from my family. I became probably a difficult and unpleasant person to live with. I had very small children at the time and was yelling a lot, which isn't my style. It's not the I was, like, on this goal to, like, disrupt intergenerational transmission of bullshit from my family of origin, and was going on the wrong path. And, yeah, recognizing I was wanting to spend a lot of time hiding in the bathroom or having that extra glass of wine, shrinking away from friendships that sustain and nurture me, and so I hope that within your networks, you can build in the support to say, I see you, I've got you, and you need to take a break. Katie Simmons' talk this morning, I felt so seen. She named things I don't think I even had a vocabulary for. And I hope she writes a book and does like a speaking tour because that moved me in a way I haven't felt in a long time.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing it. It's about these are just words on a screen, right? It's about making it real. I can hear all the stories behind every one of these points, but unless you have, like, it's just something about hearing it, from people who are in it, right, living it. And I just want to highlight the impacts are not just, and I shouldn't say just because we are important, right? It's also the impacts flow on and trickle down to the very things that we are working to do, right through to the way in which support is received and perceived by community and their outcomes. So I just wanted to highlight that. And I'm very, very conscious. I'm a big believer that one of the biggest leadership challenges you have in recovery is being able to acknowledge the suffering and acknowledging the hardship, right? But also hold hope. We don't talk enough about post-traumatic growth. It's a very real thing. But actually, it's really hard to even go there when you're in the thick of it, right? It can feel totally unattainable and unachievable, and people can feel alienated. So I think one of the challenges as a leader is how do you hold both the pain and the possibility? So I wanted to make sure that we kind of wrapped up with a message from each of us around, what does that look like? We've talked a lot about what is at stake, right? But also, let's talk about, the hopeful piece around a leadership role. Is one of the most meaningful things that you will ever do in this kind of environment. So I want to start, actually, let's go a different direction. I'm going to come back to you, Adrienne, if that's okay. But I want to go because I'm kind of going newbie to, I'm doing this 15 years too. It's making me feel really, really old. But let's start with you, Amy. Let's start with you. When we think about a message of hope, what gives you hope in terms of your future, your well-being as a leader in this role?
The people in this room, that you all are putting, you seem to be pretty functional. And many of you have been through this, and That roundtable at Snapchat, after so soon after the fire, was the first time I wept at the table, because it was the first time I felt like maybe I will someday be normal and functional again. Maybe. And it's coming to rooms like this with people who get it, people who live it, and somehow get through it and grow on the other side of it. I'm nowhere near there. But for the first time, am starting to feel like there's a potential for growth that I don't want. I didn't ask for it. I would do anything to give it back, but I don't get to. So thank you for every one of you who has showed up here in whatever capacity you're here, because know that for us who are still trying to muddle through, you are the ones who give us actual, real hope that we can get through this.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Clara?
I'm going to be really short on this one, but I wanted to highlight something again with the notes that Jennifer said yesterday that I really loved and wrote down. She talked about part of the purpose of this event being to remind ourselves that we are part of a community, quote, so that we don't have to feel hopeless and helpless. And to me, that stuck with me because that is an exercise that I do in therapy, um, to really position myself and place myself when I'm feeling hopeless, when I'm feeling helpless, to reach out to someone who I know is doing this work, even if the work itself is isolating. So I just wanted to build on that and say, really, that community and building that community of, who who else is doing this work alongside you can really build hope in a way that, at least for me, nothing else quite can. So,
Thank you. Adrienne, further down the track.
Further, yeah, 8 years since the first fire. I'll share 2 takeaways. The one building on this idea of post-traumatic growth and wisdom, this notion that, you grow through what you go through. It is really inaccessible early on, and it shouldn't be. It's too raw. You're still dealing with an active festering wound, and you're far from getting to the healing with the scar. I'm starting to feel scars, and but in a good way, because a scar means you survived it, and you made your way to the other side. And post-traumatic growth is something that you might feel a stronger sense of connection to your community. You realize that you're coming out a stronger, more capable version of yourself. You have a deeper sense of empathy and more spiritual connection. I've never, I think there was another time, I've never wished this on someone, but there's a sign out there that says, worst club, best people. I've met the most incredible people ever through this journey, and it's transformational. So there is possibility, but it comes on its own time, and you cannot rush it. And then this idea of tragic optimism is a concept that I'm learning to work with. It's Viktor Frankl's. He was a psychiatrist that was a Holocaust survivor and wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And if his thesis was, if we can endure the most horrific of circumstances, if we can find meaning. And so I try to think about every day, how do we live, love, and work in a tragedy, and take small steps towards action and cultivating hope and just supporting each other. That's what energizes me, and I hope it being here in this community that Jennifer has created and her team does that for you.
Thank you. It's just really important, I think, to have that message of hope. So, so much of this is hard. We need some hope, right? That can really, buoy us and keep us going. So thank you for helping to hold the hope. I know it can be hard sometimes. And I just want to really finish with this message. We know that a role in this kind of work, the purpose and the meaning is there for sure, but it is hazardous, right? It's potentially harmful. And there's the growth piece that is not only possible but probable over time, but it takes intentionality. So my call to you as leaders is really to be thinking about what is at stake, right? How you're doing is really going to influence how your team is doing and how your community fares through all of this. So, your call to action is to look out for yourself, but also be intentional about how you lead others through this in terms of preventing that harm. And really, we all have both the power and the responsibility to tip the scales towards growth. And I know what we didn't get time to for today was to really talk about the how. And so I wanted to leave you with some information, right? So in this QR code, there's some resources from D.D. Hirsch and also from Hummingly. So that you'll see in there the Winston Churchill report, some information around how to go about this, because that didn't exist 15 years ago. I had to go looking for it and then we had to design it. And so now it exists. You're not having to start from scratch. So take heart and take hope. And so thank you, each and every one of you, for being raw and real, making it real, right? And being vulnerable, because it makes a difference. There's a real role modeling there, but also in holding hope. We've got our details up here. Feel free to reach out to each and any one of us after this. So thank you all.